So hello everyone, we are in a new city today and I am with a new awesome guest. He is David Burns. He is the best-selling author of the best-selling book Feeling Good. So today we will learn how to have good feeling, how to become happy, and also how to develop the self-esteem. He is with me. So hello David.
Hi.
I love your name.
Yes, yeah, good name, David and David.
So maybe I'll let you to introduce yourself to people who are following us.
Yeah, well, I'm a psychiatrist, and I kind of started out in research on brain chemistry and treating depression and anxiety with pills. I was at University of Pennsylvania Medical School, and then I switched over my career to working on some of the new forms of psychotherapy, which were in the mid-1970s just coming into existence, one called Cognitive Behavior therapy. And I became very excited about it and saw that some of the new psychotherapies had far more power to change the way people think, feel, and behave than simply prescribing pills and medications. And so I gave up my academic career in brain research to develop a private practice helping to create fast-acting, powerful psychotherapy techniques.
I love that.
Yeah.
And how do you define cognitive therapy?
Well, that's a big word, but it has a simple meaning. A cognition is just a thought. It's what's going through your mind at every moment, your interpretation of what's happening. And it goes back to the Greek philosopher Epictetus 2,000 years ago. He said people are not disturbed by things or events, but rather, you know, the views we take of them. It's your thoughts rather than what's happening to you that creates your emotions.
Yeah.
And the idea's been around for 2,000 years or even more. Probably the Buddha was into this 2,500 years ago. But now psychiatrists and psychologists have turned this into a powerful form of psychotherapy. And another interesting thing about it, I mean, but the idea is so simple, people don't even grasp what it means. Like even at this moment, our thoughts are creating how we feel. Like if I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to screw up, I won't smile well enough, I have to come up with something interesting to say, but I don't have anything interesting to say, then I'll feel a great deal of anxiety. But it's not the cameras that would be creating those emotions, but rather the messages that I'm giving myself. And so that's one of the powerful theories underneath cognitive therapy. It's just a simple idea. But the second idea behind it is even more kind of mind-blowing, and that's when we're upset, meaning when you're depressed, when you feel anxious, when you feel insecure, when you're kind of beating up on yourself.
Mood.
Yeah, you're in a bad mood, depressed mood. The thoughts, it's not what's happening to you, but your thoughts. And those thoughts will almost never be valid thoughts, that you're fooling yourself. Depression and anxiety are the world's oldest cons. There's a kind of fraud involved. That's the really amazing thing about it. And in Feeling Good, I talk about 10 cognitive distortions or forms of twisted thinking.
Yeah.
Like
I would love to know the terms.
Like for example, one of them is called all or nothing thinking, black or white thinking. If you're not a complete success, you think you're a total failure. Like
in my extreme perceptions.
For example, I mentioned now I'm out at Stanford and I have this weekly training group where I help local therapists and students learn new psychotherapy, but also develop their own self-esteem, break out of their own depression. And a lot of what we do is live work. We help the people who attend this weekly seminar deal with their own mood slumps, their own times they fall into a black hole. And so this Tuesday, I have a dear colleague, a wonderful woman, and she's in her 60s. She's a local therapist and a woman of tremendous skill and compassion, but a single woman. And she's very kind of generous. She spent her life treating people who don't have any money and working with people who are poor and things like that. And she went to her retirement advisor to see, what will happen when I retire. And she discovered that she hasn't been planning very well for her retirement, and that her income from Social Security and from her investments is going to be very modest. And this shocked her and frightened her. But then she had the thought, I'm a failure, I'm a loser.
Yeah.
And she believed those thoughts 100%. And it plunged her into a very severe depression. She was angry at herself. I gave her a depression test. She was moderately depressed.
So you are saying that if we change our thoughts, we will change our
when
feeling.
you change the way you think, you can change the way you feel. That's the whole basis of it. But you've got to take your thoughts and write them down. I had to write these negative thoughts down on a piece of paper. Then I have this little checklist of 10 distortions.
For example, I am in a
back.
bad mood and I take a paper and I write down everything I have in my mind on the paper, right?
Yeah, all the negative thoughts. And then
I'm a loser, I will fail, I'm not good enough, I don't have enough study, I'm too small.
That's right, exactly. And we all do this to ourselves, and you think those thoughts are real, and you think those thoughts are valid. So with her, I just went through the list of 10 distortions one at a time. I said, now, are there any distortions in that thought? And she said, well, all or nothing thinking. And also another one called discounting the positive. And I said, well, I guess I could point out to myself that I have 4 master's degrees and a PhD. And also my colleagues have told me that my skills in treating the most difficult patients of all are superb.
Yeah.
And then she went on looking at all these things about herself that she'd been overlooking when she was saying, I'm a loser, I'm a failure. But that's what we do to ourselves. We get into these black holes where we're thinking about things in an incredibly distorted way. It happens to me. I'm sure it has happened to you, David. I remember when I was a psychiatric resident, just learning psychotherapy, I had this very famous mentor who he was actually one of the creators of cognitive therapy, Aaron Beck. And he's in Philadelphia, and I was presenting a case to him, and it's a patient that hadn't been paying his bill at the clinic. He was coming, but he wasn't paying for his sessions. He was way behind in his billing, and I made a comment to him about the billing, and the patient got upset. So then I presented this to Dr. Beck, and he said, oh, well, you didn't handle this correctly with this patient. And I began to panic and feel worthless and extraordinarily ashamed. And so I went home and I said, well, I'll have to jog and get my brain chemistry straightened around. So I went for a 6-mile jog. And the farther I ran, the more those thoughts seemed true. And I said, I'm the worst therapist in the world. They're going to kick me out of the state of Pennsylvania. They'll take my license away. I have no skill, I'm a horrible human being. And I thought, my gosh, those thoughts aren't distorted. That's real. And why did it take me so many years to see what a horrible human being I am? And I can tell you, I believed it 100%. And that's the kind of thing that happens. And then when I got home, I said, why don't you write your thoughts down on a piece of paper, like you tell your patients to do, and see if there are any distortions in them? And I said, oh, no, that wouldn't do any good. My thoughts are real. There's no distortions. Then I said, yeah, but that's what your patients say. They whine like that too. But why don't you try it out? Just try it out. So I wrote down, I'm one of the worst therapists in the world. I have no talent. I have no skill. They're going to kick me out of the state of Pennsylvania. I wrote them down, 1, 2, 3. And I said, are there any distortions here? And then I thought, well, wait a minute. All or nothing thinking, overgeneralization, discounting the positive, emotional reasoning, hidden should statements. I'm saying I should be perfect, I should never make mistakes, self-blame. I found about 6 or 8 of the distortions, and it was a surprise to me. And then I said, now can you write a positive thought down? Can you challenge these thoughts?
It's the second step.
First
you write down, second step you
identify the distortions.
Yeah.
And then the third step, you come up with a positive thought. It's kind of a simple approach. It's pretty sophisticated in reality, but the basic ideas are simple. And then I said, well, I could tell myself I'm human. And as a student, or even an advanced therapist, I have the right to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And
you write that?
Yeah, and I write it down. And that doesn't mean I'm a terrible therapist, because I've had a lot of patients I've been able to help. But maybe instead of being all ashamed, I can go back and tell this patient that I made a mistake and talk it over with them and use that as an opportunity to develop a deeper, better relationship.
Wow.
And I said, how much do you believe that? I put 100%. Now, how much do you believe I'm a failure, I'm a loser, I'm a horrible human being? 0%. And it was like magic. And I just felt elated. My negative mood just, flew away.
And you keep back your power to improve yourself and learn from your your failures.
Yeah. And then the next day I saw the patient. I said, boy, I screwed up so bad last session, and I was so ashamed of it. And I'll bet you were so angry and hurt. I didn't handle the thing about the billing well at all. Let's talk it over. And he just opened up, and we had the best session ever. And it was like an amazing thing. But inside me, you see, I had these rules that I have to be perfect. I'm not allowed to make mistakes. I have to get everyone's approval all the time. And it was those core beliefs, my attitude, my way of thinking about it, that was the source of my misery.
Yes.
It wasn't what actually happened, but the way I was thinking about it.
And how do you help someone who has this deep belief that he has to do perfect?
This is my cat, in case you can't see it. This is and he's called Happy. We adopt stray cats, and we love our cats. And I've learned a lot from my cats too. I've learned a lot about psychotherapy.
Oh, it's amazing.
Because I've learned the power of patience and kindness and love. We take stray cats. Some of our cats that we've adopted, like Obi, you haven't seen him yet, but he was a wild, violent cat when he came to our house. He'd never had any contact with humans, and he only came to our house because his paw was all infected. It was as big as his head, and he knew he was on the verge of death. So we captured him and brought him to the vet, and he had surgery to save his life, and then we adopted him. And initially, when we brought him in the house, he would try to break through the windows. And when my wife tried to get close to him, he bit her real hard, real badly on the cheek, and he would pee and poo all over the carpets. And now he's turned into the most loving, sweet, little, just like Happy here, just my best friend, and has really taught me the tremendous power, because we were told that a feral cat, a wild cat, can't learn to trust people. And now he gets on my chest at night, and he kneads me with his paws, he drools, he purrs. When we have guests over, like for my Sunday hikes, my students come and we hike, I mentioned, for hours and do personal work and practice techniques. And he's very trusting, and he's just very warm and loving. And so I'm just really a believer in the tremendous power of human beings. I've had over 35 or 40,000 therapy sessions with patients with severe depression and severe anxiety. And it's such a joy to see someone before your very eyes, the depression disappear and go to joy. And that's why I wrote my first book, Feeling Good, because I wanted to share these techniques with people, to let the world know that magic is possible. And now at Stanford, we're developing a new version of cognitive therapy where we're trying to complete a course of therapy in just 1 or 2 sessions to take people who are suffering terribly and see their mood change from sobbing to joy and laughter, and usually in just a single therapy session.
Yes, and my question about that is how to become happy in this life.
Yeah, well, you're a motivational speaker. I've seen what you do on YouTube, and it's really, really cool. And you're kind of into taking people with kind of normal mood and happiness and elevate them to greatness. My thing is a little different from that. The people who come to me are struggling with suicidal thoughts and feeling that they're worthless and extreme forms of anxiety. And so my thing is to get a person up to where all those negative feelings disappear. But that itself is one of the greatest feelings in the world, because patients, when their depression disappears, they say it's like being born again. It's the greatest feeling a human being can experience. And so I'm not so much trying to say how can you increase your potential or increase your joy, but say, give me a moment that you were upset with a colleague, with your spouse, with your boyfriend, your girlfriend, or when you were feeling anxiety or worrying or having a panic attack or feeling depressed. And then I help the person change the way they were thinking and feeling at that moment, using many powerful techniques, and then to watch them go from that state of despair to a state of joy.
For example, if I come to you in saying, I hate my life, I'm 80% angry and bad mood every time, I don't know why I'm in this earth, what do you do with me in individual session?
Well, the new way we would work with you is we call it team therapy, TEAM. And TEAM stands for testing. So the first thing, happy. First thing I do, I'd give you what I call a brief mood survey, a little test of your moods that you can complete in 30 seconds.
On a paper?
Yeah, and it would show me exactly how depressed you are right now, how suicidal you are, how anxious you are, how angry you are. Those are all negative feelings, plus a test of positive feelings. So I'd see how happy you are, but in this case, you wouldn't be happy at all. That's the first thing.
It takes only 30 seconds?
Yeah. After the filming, I can show you the test.
Is it possible to do one and to measure?
Yeah, the tests are very accurate. They took decades to develop, but they're roughly 95% accurate. Like the depression test, you can take in 15 seconds and score it and interpret it, and it has a 95% accuracy. It's very, very sensitive, and it's how are you feeling right now, because I want to know how the patient is feeling at the start of the session, because then we're going to measure it again at the end of the session and see if we've gotten this massive shift that we're trying to get, to get you out of that horrible mood and into joy and self-esteem and optimism. So that's the first thing. And a lot of therapists don't do that. They just bullshit with people behind closed doors. And they're not measuring anything. So what we're trying to do is have a data-driven form of psychotherapy, an empirical psychotherapy where we're measuring things and proving that we're getting results rapidly or not getting results, in which case we have to change the strategy.
Great.
The second thing I would do is to empathize. And I use what's called 5 secrets of effective communication. I wouldn't try to help you with your bad mood. I would just listen, repeat your words, find truth in what you're saying, try to see the world through your eyes so that I would be your ally, not somebody who's trying to fix you in some way. That's the E of empathy.
Do you use synchronization of your body, of your voice?
No, I think that's bullshit. But a lot of people talk about that kind of stuff. I'm opinionated, and half of what comes out of my mouth is good and half is not so good. So take what I say with a grain of salt. But no, I think the secrets is more finding the truth in what the person is saying and acknowledging their emotions.
So what kind of question you ask in this kind of moment?
Well, you mentioned that you're very angry, and there's a lot to be angry about in the world, and also you're feeling down, you mentioned to me. Tell me about that, and what are the things that have been going on and that are causing you to feel a lot of anger and a lot of discouragement.
Okay.
And then whatever the person says, I would find truth in what they're saying. I would agree with them, and I ask them about their emotions and show them that I'm their ally, not somebody trying to fix them or trying to give them advice or anything like that. And this takes a lot of training of therapists to teach them how to do this. Also, when people have troubled relationships, we teach them how to do this in the relationship with the person they're having trouble with, show them how to relate more skillfully, but that's a little different topic. Then the third thing I would do as the therapist is called paradoxical agenda setting. Now that's another big word, but what it means is I would bring out all the reasons for you not to change. I would try to make you proud of your anger, proud of your depression, to show what this shows about you that's really very elegant and very awesome. And I would...
And what kind of question you do to help the people to see, to be proud of what they are feeling?
Well, do you remember I gave you an example earlier in the interview of the colleague who said, I'm a failure, because she hadn't planned well for her retirement. And before I helped her change her thinking, I said to her, what do these thoughts show about you that's really kind of beautiful and awesome?
Wow.
And she said, well, I can't think of anything. I said, well, I can think of five or 10 things. For example, for one thing, it shows that you're a woman of great integrity because you're looking at your faults and your flaws with ruthless honesty.
Yeah.
And she said, well, that's true. And so she wrote down integrity.
It's great.
What else does it show about you? She said, well, it shows that I'm very humble and spiritual. I said, that's absolutely true. You're one of the most humble.
So you help them to consider what they are feeling in another perceptions.
Yes, yeah. In other words, therapists are always trying to change patients, right, to help them. And that forces people to remain the same. Because anytime you try to push something on someone, they naturally resist.
Yeah, it's the law.
Yeah, so instead, I get the patient to see that you're suffering, this is something awesome about you. And we came up a list of 10 tremendous things it showed about her. It showed, too, that she had devoted her life to helping people, the poor, rather than making a lot of money. So it showed that her to be a very loving person. And also showed when she beats up on herself, it shows she has high standards, right?
Yeah.
And on and on and on. And so
wow.
By the time we got to the end
awesome.
of this list, we say, well, you know so-and-so, I won't say her name to protect her identity, but maybe this isn't something we would need to change. Maybe all this suffering that you're having is a good thing.
Yeah.
And then she says, yeah, but I'm feeling so horrible, and but I really do want to change. And say, well, then maybe we could dial it down a little bit. Rather than she was 100% depressed, 100% angry, 100% ashamed, 100% anxious. What would be a healthy amount of negative feelings? She said, oh, well, 20% depression would be enough, and 10% anxiety, and 5% shame. And I don't need all of that. And now we're on board. You say, well, now let's just lower it. We won't make these feelings go away completely. We'll just lower them. And so what I've really done now is I've made a deal with her subconscious mind. Do you see? Now she won't resist the treatment. And then
you help her to allow this.
Allow some of the negative feelings, yes. Rather than trying to go from horribly depressed to euphoric, we don't need to be 100% depressed when you find you have to make new retirement plans. You don't need all these negative feelings. You don't need to be beat up on yourself that much. And then I use M of methods. See, TEAM, testing, empathy, agenda setting, and methods. And I've developed 50 or 100 methods to change negative thinking patterns. And I just used one called externalization of voices, and she hit the ball out of the park. And she was able to crush all of her negative thoughts in about 1 or 2 minutes, and all of her negative feelings disappeared. It was like magic.
Yeah.
And it was like a miracle. And the feelings went much lower. They went down to 0, most of them. See, once she decided she'll keep some of them, then she didn't need them anymore, and they all disappeared. And once she was motivated to attack those negative thoughts and feelings, I would say that it took maybe less than 5 minutes to complete the treatment at that point. And we see this over and over again now. I didn't used to see this in the early days of my practice. We feel it's an amazing new breakthrough in psychotherapy, and my team at Stanford has developed it. We call it team therapy, and now I've been doing workshops on it around the United States and Canada, and they've opened a little Feeling Good Institute here.
Great.
So we're kind of excited about it.
It's great. I love that. Just before the interview, we were talking about the fact we were shy.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that the people can listen to that. Oh, he was shy. It's impossible.
Yeah.
And do you have some keys about to develop to increase self-esteem?
Well, one thing that I wanted to mention, you've talked about self-esteem and self-confidence, and I think those are very different.
Yeah.
And I don't know what your definition is, but I call self-confidence is the idea you're going to be successful because you've been successful at that type of thing in the past. So when I give a workshop, I have self-confidence because I've given so many workshops, I pretty much know they'll be pretty successful. Yeah. They might be a home run or they might be somewhat successful. That depends on how warm and kind I am to the audience and how enthusiastic I am. But I know they'll be okay. They'll be pretty darn good. Now, self-esteem, I think, is the ability to love yourself and accept yourself when you fail as much as when you succeed. And I think that's the difference between them. But you asked a question, I don't even remember what it was.
Yeah, I repeat it again.
Okay.
Do you have some tips to develop the self-esteem for the people who are following us? Mm-hmm. What they can do to develop, to increase their self-esteem?
Well, I could answer that in two different ways, what people can do to increase their self-esteem. The first place, if someone who's watching this has low self-esteem, the probability is overwhelming that they're experiencing some depression, because a loss of self-esteem is the key to depression. That's the most important symptom. And the other most important symptom is hopelessness, the idea that things will never change. They'll be like this forever. Now, one thing, and this might be overly promotional, but there's been a lot of research on my book, Feeling Good, and I know there is a French translation there. You can obtain it in French.
Do you know the title?
That book, right.
Do you know the title in French?
No, I can't find it on my bookshelf, the French versions, but I know there's a French version in France, and then Quebec also has a French version. Yeah. And they're slightly different from each other. But there's been a lot of research on the book Feeling Good. And this wasn't my research, but a colleague in the University of Alabama, Forrest Gogan. And what they have discovered, they were looking for the cheapest way to treat depression. And so they said, what would happen if we just give people with severe depressions a copy of Dr. Burns's book, Feeling Good, and see what happens to them over a 4-week period of time with no treatment. Cool. These were people coming to the medical center asking for drugs or psychotherapy for moderate to severe depression. And what they discovered was that 2/3 of them, roughly 65% of them, at the end of the 4 weeks, they had recovered from the depression. Cool. And they didn't need medications, they didn't need psychotherapy. Then they've also done long-term follow-up studies on those patients to see do they then relapse. And they've done up to 3 years long-term follow-up studies, and they're even feeling better at the end of the 3 years than at the end of the initial 4 weeks. So that's called bibliotherapy, or self-help therapy, with no psychiatrist, no psychologist, and no drugs. Now, that doesn't mean everyone would be cured, because 1/3 of the people, the book wasn't enough. But for many people, if they could get a copy of Feeling Good in French or whatever, that would be one thing that you could do, to help yourself. Now, for myself personally, I've developed 100 techniques, but the technique that has helped me the most is called the acceptance paradox. And it's the opposite of perfectionism. Yeah. And the acceptance paradox means to accept the fact that you are flawed, that you're not as good as you should be, and you never will be. And rather than trying to better yourself, to accept yourself as a human being. Now, you can talk about acceptance, but it's hard for people to grasp it. I've developed exercises to help people learn the acceptance paradox.
Do you have 1 or 2 exercises the people can do now, for example?
Well, one is called externalization of voices.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like that written exercise where we're talking about writing down negative thoughts and then combating them with positive thoughts. But instead of writing it down, you do it in a role play. Like, I could help you with this if you have any negative thoughts of your own. Do you get negative thoughts sometimes?
Yeah.
And what do you tell yourself?
I am not enough good. Yeah, maybe it was that.
I'm not good enough?
Yeah, I'm not good enough.
Okay, I love that thought. That's one everyone watching this video can identify with. We can put your hands up if you feel you're not good enough. And many hands just went up. That's a good one. Any others?
I have another one. I will not be capable to do it. Yet it's another one I have sometimes.
And what is it that I won't be capable to do? I won't be successful enough?
Yeah, I won't be successful enough in my company, for example.
Okay, let's just work on those two thoughts.
Yeah, I love.
Now, one of us will be the negative David, and one will be the positive David. We're both going to be your mind.
Yeah.
And I'll let you start out as the positive one, and I'll be the negative one. And this will allow us to illustrate the acceptance paradox and another strategy called the self-defense paradigm. There's two opposite ways of defeating your own negative thoughts. Now, people watching this video, the first thing they need to know is to write down their negative thoughts when they're upset. That's the key to it. If you try to do this in your head, it won't work. But we know two of your negative thoughts. Now, could I talk to you for a minute, David?
Yeah.
Do you know who I am?
You're the negative one.
Yeah, right? I'm negative you, and I didn't want to upset you, but I wanted to mention a couple things to you.
Yeah.
And the first thing I want to mention to you is you're actually not good enough.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Now, how are you going to defeat that thought?
How you will defeat?
You have to defeat me.
Oh.
You're the positive David. I'm the negative David.
Okay. Okay. So, why do you think that?
Use the first person I.
Okay. I have to explain. To argue. Okay. I think.
So you're not good enough. You can't even respond to my criticism. Tony Robbins would have been able to answer this right away.
Yes, yes, I can, because I did so many things I am proud of. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Now, who won that exchange? Did you defeat me or did I defeat you?
Oh yeah, you defeat me.
Okay, try a role reversal.
Yeah.
I thought you did pretty well there as the positive David, but now you be the negative David and I'll be the positive David. And say exactly the same thing to me. You're not good enough.
I think I'm not understanding what you will doing.
I'll explain it again if you like, because even in English, this is sophisticated.
Yeah.
But it's fun, so it's worth explaining so you and the people watching this can understand. Ask a question if you don't understand what we're doing, and I'll spell it out.
So you are not good enough.
Okay. You know, I've accomplished a lot of things, and that I'm, proud of those things, but there's probably nothing about me that couldn't be improved. And there's probably a lot of people who are way better than I am in virtually everything that I do. And I accept that. In fact, I have many friends in low places.
Yeah, but it's amazing.
Who won that exchange?
You.
Yeah, and how did I win?
Because you accept that you are not perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And for me personally, that has changed my life, that concept. Now, I'm going to be the negative David again.
Yeah.
So again, let's just do what you did. Let's do a role reversal. I'm the negative David, the negative voice in your mind. You're the positive voice.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try to make you feel upset, and you see if you can defeat me.
Okay.
Okay, once again, David, I just wanted to remind you that you're not as good as you should be.
Okay. I think I achieved a lot of things, and I'm proud of that. And the other thing, I am improving myself every day, so it's okay for me to are not good enough now, because I'm I know that I'm improving every day. So
Okay. Now that's called the self-defense paradigm. You're defending against the negative thought. And you did well. That's very impressive. But I'll show you a different way to defeat that thought using what I call the acceptance paradox. Hit me with that same negative thought.
And I accept that again. I can try, and I accept the fact that I'm maybe not good enough.
Oh, so you accept the fact that you're not good enough. Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, don't you think that's rather shameful?
What is shameful?
Bad?
No, it's good. It's okay for me.
Well, why is it okay to be not as good as you should be? How can that be okay?
Because because I'm happy like that.
Right, and that's the acceptance paradox, and it's hard for people to grasp.
Yeah.
But once you've grasped it, it's liberating. It's really what the Buddha was trying to get people. It's called enlightenment. It's the same thing. Now, I'll show you my version of the acceptance paradox.
Yeah,
I'll be David Burns. I'll be David Burns, and you be the negative David Burns.
Just last thing. Can I say that it's okay for me to not be good sometimes, but I think I am good enough. Can I say that?
Well, I'll show you a different way to respond to it. You be the negative David, I'll be the positive David.
So David, I have to say you something.
Go for it, yeah.
Yeah, you are not good enough.
Oh, absolutely. There's nothing about me that couldn't be improved a great deal.
Yeah, straight.
Do you see that?
Yeah.
That's pure acceptance paradox without any self-defense. And that's what is the most helpful for me personally.
So you don't need to defend yourself because it's okay, is that right?
Exactly, but it's a spiritual insight, and it can't be taught intellectually. You have to suddenly see it. It's like seeing the Grand Canyon for the first time. It takes your breath away. And what you were saying is, I'm getting better and better all the time, and the problem with that, it puts you on a treadmill. Now, I have a student, and you're never good enough. Do you see? You're working to try to get to something. And I have a student, had a student named Matthew May, a psychiatrist, Matthew May, MD, and he's become phenomenally effective. I think he might be the most effective psychiatrist in the world. And we teach together now at Stanford, and he has his private practice. But when he was a student, I used to supervise him for 3 hours once a week. And we'd get a pizza, talk about his difficult cases, and then we'd go driving around in the hills and talk about his personal issues a little bit, his dating and his insecurities. And once we were driving around in the hills, and we came to a stop sign, and he looked at me and he says, "Oh, Dr. Burns, I want you to know that every day I'm working so hard to become a better person." And I looked at him and I said, "Matt, I hope you get over that pretty soon." And he just burst into laughter because he saw then, he got his enlightenment at that moment. You see, this trying to become a better person can be a kind of trap, a kind of narcissistic trap. But let's come back to the externalization of voices. I'll be the negative David, and you be the positive David.
Yeah.
Well, there was another thing I want to tell you, David, is you may not become as successful as you should be. You may not become as successful as you want with this project and that you're working on. In fact, it might not be successful at all.
And okay, and what else?
I see. So who won that exchange?
I don't know. This time I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Do a role reversal. You be the negative and I'll be the positive.
Okay. So David, you will not succeed in your project.
Well, succeed and fail is all or nothing thinking. I've already had some success in my project because I'm having fun with it. I'm meeting people all over the world. I'm learning about video. I'm learning about, web development. It's an exciting journey. And so I'll have some success. And that success might be tremendous, or it might be only very modest. I accept it either way. If it's a modest success, I'll move on to the next project. And if it's a great success, I'll thank God and thank my lucky stars that it's helpful to so many people.
Can I say I will have success and failures when it's okay?
Yeah, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a lot of successes in my life. I've had a lot of failures in my life, and I'll have a lot of failures in the future. I don't need to be afraid of failure. I can learn from failures just as much as I can learn from successes.
But if I say it's okay for me to fail because I will succeed in learning from that, it is a difference.
Right, but it's also okay to fail even if I don't learn from it.
Yeah. I love what you're saying because it is maybe the step higher.
Yeah,
just
that's right. Yeah, it's achieving true freedom. See, when I started out my career, I thought I had to be the greatest psychiatrist there was. And that was my perfectionism. And it drove me very hard. So when I was stuck with a patient said, "You're not helping me," I would create more techniques and more techniques. And I couldn't stand it if I was failing with a patient.
I have that too.
Yeah, so there was some value in it. But it was also a bad thing because my patients had power over me, because all they had to do is say, "You're not helping me," and then they could kind of control me because it made me so anxious and uncomfortable. I would do anything to try to get them to change. And after I'd been in practice for 7 years, I had a sudden change. And a patient said to me, "Dr. Burns, you're not helping me enough." And these were, by the way, very difficult, suicidal, angry, very difficult individuals, very challenging. And this patient said that to me, and I said, you're right about that, and I feel sad about it, and I can imagine that you're angry with me, and I feel that I haven't helped you nearly as much as I want. In fact, I haven't helped you at all. You're just as depressed and angry today as the first day when you came in. Let's talk about it. Tell me about all the ways I failed you and all the negative feelings you have. This is incredibly important. And then suddenly the patient opened up, and we had the best session ever. And I suddenly realized the willingness to fail gave me a new source of power that I hadn't had the first 7 years of my practice. So the desire to succeed can be a good thing, but it can also be a curse.
Yeah, I think so. It's amazing because with this project here, I spent a lot of money to do that, and it's huge for me. It's incredible for me to meet such of different people, but at the same time, I feel more fear, more bad emotions than maybe in the year. And it's amazing because
and it's that need to succeed, that fear of failure. Now, before you came over, I went for my morning jog, and I was feeling anxious because I've always had a phobia of cameras. When I wrote my book on anxiety, I realized I've had 13 or 14 different anxiety disorders myself. I've had shyness, and I've had fear of cameras, and fear of bees, and fear of horses. I've had all kinds of fears, and public speaking anxiety, and just on and on and on. And so whenever anyone is anxious, has come through with anxiety, I say, "Boy, I'm going to love treating you because I know how you feel. I've had that too, and I can show you how to defeat that thing. I can show you the cure." That's why I love treating anxiety, because I've had just about every kind of anxiety there is. But when I was jogging, before you came over, I was getting anxious. I was thinking, wow, I won't be good enough. I won't be able to think of anything worthwhile to say. He's going to feel like he's wasting his time. He's going to go and talk to Tony Robbins next, and Tony Robbins has more talent in his fingernail than I have in my whole body. And I'm kind of a loser. I'm no good. I'm not good enough. And then I said to myself, well, that's okay. If you don't give him what he wants, if you don't do well, you can accept that. You'll still have a nice lunch. You'll meet a wonderful person, his girlfriend. Life goes on, and then when I accept that, it kind of takes the pressure away. Because I do my best work when I'm not trying to be successful, when I'm just connecting with the patient or going with the flow or hanging out with the cats or being relaxed. That's when the good stuff comes out.
And when you just are doing now, you can't imagine that how I love what you are saying, what you are doing now. It's you are inspiring me.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I don't know if you see that.
Yeah, and that's great. I'm so happy about that, because it's a message that's changed my life, and it's changed the life of so many people that I've worked with.
I am seeing a lot of power in your ability to. For me, it's easy to talk about the fact I was shy, because it's finished.
Yeah.
But it's not so easy for me to do what I just do before in speaking about what are my fear of now. Because when I do that in camera, I show my imperfections.
Yeah.
And just you are doing so well. I love what you're doing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, and can you see that your imperfections is actually the best part about you?
Yeah.
You see that?
Yeah, I see that in you, and
that allows us to connect.
Yeah, right.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, it is. It is new for me. It is.
Yeah.
I started 1 week ago to do that, and I started to do something. Maybe you will love that. When I do videos about tips, keys, or my past stories. And it's easy for me.
Yeah.
I am confident and about to do videos. I did a lot. But from 1 week ago, I started to do videos in live. What I mean, for example, two days ago, I was angry, and I decided to record that.
Yeah.
Put the camcorder and in live explain what I do to have good feelings.
Yeah.
And it was hard for me to accept, to show me with the bad emotions.
Yeah.
But I do that because I think it will be more powerful for people to see that I can feel bad emotions.
Yeah. I call that emotophobia, which means the fear of negative emotions. The idea I'm not supposed to have negative emotions.
Yeah.
And it's another belief, and that happens to me too. Now, for example, at Stanford, when I have this weekly group, we have about 25 people who come, or 30 people, students and therapists in the community, and we work for 2.5 hours, and I teach them, and my colleague Jill Levitt, a psychologist who teaches with me, she's the co-leader of the group. We teach new techniques, and they practice them, and we treat them, and things like that. And then at the end of the evening, they rate the teachers. They rate me on a very personal scale.
Yeah.
So every little error that I made comes out on this scale, and they write, what did you like the least, and what did you like the most? They write it at the bottom. And this last Tuesday, I was a little critical of one of the students. I was too critical of her empathy skills, and she gave me horrible ratings. And it was a shock to me. I think it's the lowest ratings I've ever had in a seminar at Stanford, and I thought I was doing great. And then I get to feeling ashamed, and I think, oh, I better not let her see this, because I'm supposed to be a guru, I'm supposed to be a professor, I'm supposed to have it all together. But what I've discovered is that then the next week I go back and say, I did such a poor job with you in the teaching, and I felt really embarrassed and ashamed afterwards, because your criticisms were valid, and it's really kind of hard for me to acknowledge this. But I really appreciated your feedback, because what you said was absolutely correct. Suddenly then the person feels close to me, and the teaching becomes magical. But like you, there's a part of me that thinks we shouldn't have certain kinds of negative emotions, so we try to cover them up or hide them.
Yeah, I love that.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah, it's true. So David, I have a serious question to ask you. Do you have advices to become unhappy in this life?
Yeah, it's fairly trivial, but it has some value, and it's also something I saw on television, so I can't necessarily take credit for it. And it goes back, I think, to Epictetus, or one of the early Greek philosophers. and said that the way to become unhappy is to tell yourself you're going to have a wonderful day when you wake up. And to expect that good things are going to happen, because then when you get in a traffic jam or you meet some irritating person, you'll say, oh, this shouldn't be happening, and you'll work yourself up into a state of frustration and irritation. And,
Wow.
a good example of that is computers. Because you're a computer person. I haven't done a workshop for 6 weeks, so my laptop has been turned off.
Yeah.
So this morning I turned it on to see if I could update my Norton security and the Windows updates.
Yeah.
Which should be easy, right?
Yeah.
But I told myself this is probably going to be a pain in the ass. I'll probably have to call the helplines, and the computer's probably not going to work properly. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. The laptop, it couldn't even connect to the internet. The Norton said your security is expired, and I just paid 2 years to renew it for 2 years. And it had the wrong BIOS in it. And I had to call Norton Security for about 2 hours. And I had to call the Hewlett-Packard laptop help, that's some guy in the Philippines, for about an hour. And now it's finally up to speed. But I predicted that it would be a pain in the ass, and it was a pain in the ass, so it wasn't that much of a surprise. So I didn't get that upset about it. I just said, well, this is what I expected. So that's kind of a humble idea. But if I, like on a workshop, if I say, boy, I'm going to hit the ball out of the park, I get kind of arrogant, and then people get annoyed with me.
Yeah.
And it's not as good. But if I tell myself that I'll probably have some bumps in the road, then when they come, they're not a surprise, and I can handle that.
Yeah,
but that's just kind of a trivial thought.
Yeah, it is amazing key. So if I would like to become unhappy in this life, I have to pay attention to my bad thoughts and.
Yeah, and the other thing you can do to continue to be unhappy when you have bad thoughts, like I'm not good enough and I should be better, and
Yeah.
people should treat me better,
Yeah,
and what's
they're
wrong
bad.
with me, and I shouldn't have made that mistake, and all of these things, don't write them down on a piece of paper.
Okay, don't
just
write.
just let them go around and around in your head, and then you'll be able to put yourself into a very severe state of depression.
Thank you, David. I will try that.